it, Tzu Chi volunteer Wang Mingliang puts aside his sorrow of losing his loved ones to care for relatives of plane crash victims. We meet staff of the Geotechnical Engineering Office in Taipei, who dedicates themselves to protect citizens' life and property. Welcome to DaAi Headlines. I'm Helen Liao. Thank you for joining us. While caring for one of the fortunate survivors of the Trans-Asia Airways crash in Penghu, Mr. Li Shunji, who is currently in the ICU, Tzu Chi volunteers learned that his wife has fallen ill due to the stress of constant worrying. Volunteers also took the senior under their wing and even helped watch over her grandchildren.
This is made by the Jingsebo Dharma Masters. Eat it every morning. It's very nutritious.
Tzu Chi volunteers have brought nutritious foods and fruits for Mrs. Li, who is hospitalized in Kaohsiung. Just 3 days earlier, Mrs. Li was worried sick over her husband's condition, sitting in front of the ICU. Now she looks a lot livelier. Mr. Li is one of the fortunate survivors of the Trans-Asia Airways crash in Penghu, though he is seriously injured. Due to a stroke, Mrs. Li's health is wobbling. Volunteers now watch over both the husband and wife.
The volunteers visit me at least 4 times a day. They even come at night. I owe them so much.
Mrs. Li is especially grateful for Wang Mingliang, one of the volunteers.
Her son had to go to Xiluo Yunlin for business. Other volunteers knew he wouldn't make it back in time to prepare his children's dinner. Mrs. Li thinks I cook decent, so I have brought more today.
Worry about the senior's 2 grandchildren. Volunteers make sure they always have hot meals to eat. With the volunteers' encouragement and love, hopefully Lily's life will soon return to normal.
Tzu Chi volunteer Wang Mingliang was one of the many who lost family members in the plane crash. Facing the sudden loss of his loved ones, Wang chose to leave his sorrows behind and instead turned his energy to offering support to those who also lost family members in the tragedy.
I'm here to check on the setup of the service hall.
This is Tzu Chi volunteer Wang Mingliang, who lost his brother and sister-in-law in the Trans-Asia Airlines crash. Following the tragedy, Wang has become the spiritual pillar of support for his family.
I am really thankful to have my uncle and the other Tzu Chi brothers and sisters around. Thanks to their support, we feel more comforted during these difficult times.
If one has done things that benefit society, of course he or she will be at peace.
Growing up in Penghu before moving to Kaohsiung, Wang Mingliang brings Tzu Chi's uniform along whenever he travels back to Penghu and is always prepared to help the needy.
Now that my brother is gone, what I can do is to comfort my nephew and join the other Tzu Chi volunteers in soothing the hearts of the victims' families.
Apart from supporting his own family, Wang Mingliang joins other volunteers in the chanting of sutras for the many that lost their lives. Whenever transportation is needed, Wang is always ready to help.
Master Zheng Yan tells us to waste no time, so we need to seize the opportunity to help.
Putting Master Zheng Yan's teachings into practice, Wang Mingliang has learned to adapt to the impermanence of life and turn his sorrow into blessings for those in need.
Following the plane crash, several Penghu residents have been doing their part to help the families of the victims get through this difficult time. Case in point is Su Wenzhang, a tea shop owner who brings tea every morning to the nearby funeral home for bereaved family members and volunteers.
Every morning at 8 a.m., tea shop owner Su Wenzhang delivers 3 containers of homemade iced tea to the nearby funeral home.
It's really nothing. I just thought that since all the staff and families have to face this heat on a daily basis, this tea can help cool down their bodies and their anxious hearts. It's that simple.
After delivering the tea, Su jumps into his truck and drives off to start another day of work. Preparing the ingredients by hand before brewing the tea in vats as tall as himself, Su now needs to brew an extra vat of tea every day. Despite the extra work, there is no complaint, only a desire to help those dealing with the plane crash.
We were devastated when we first saw the news. We wanted to help but didn't know how to go about that. Then we realized that since it is really hot outside, why not offer them some of our tea and create good affinities in the process?
Moving from Penghu to Yunlin some 30 years ago, Su Wenzhang is always on the lookout for ways to give back to what has become his second home.
The master constantly encouraged us to go out and serve. Every person can serve in their own way. We do as much as we can and to the best of our ability. Whatever we can help with, we should do so.
很好，很好，功德无量，功德无量。
At 1 in the afternoon, Su once again drives to the funeral home to refill the tea containers, something that he has been doing since the news of the crash. The sun is fierce in Penghu, but locals such as Su are ensuring that families and volunteers find a way to beat the heat.
好，感恩，感恩，感恩。
In the Philippines, Tzu Chi volunteers continue to hold rice distributions in Leyte province. During the distribution in Palo and Tanawan, Tzu Chi volunteers encountered 3 men who, despite being visually impaired, were determined to overcome all obstacles to create a better future for themselves and their families.
Kasi bulag nga eh. Basta wag niya ba yung take.
Climbing up a coconut palm tree to gather sap is 27-year-old Alfredo Bertrudez, the breadwinner of his family despite being visually impaired.
Trabaho ko po, ganyan lang pag-akyat ng nyug.
After I climb up the palm tree, I will extract sap and make vinegar from it. When I have about 1 gallon of vinegar, my family and I will sell it in the market.
Kahit saan lang kayo mapunta, dun sa palengke.
This is Teduro Bertrudez, who lives alone and also suffers some vision loss. Bertrudez says in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan, he lost his main source of income.
Right now, it is very hard for me to make ends meet because all the coconut trees are gone. I don't even have money to get through tomorrow.
Following Typhoon Haiyan, Tzu Chi volunteers traveled to Leyte province to help those affected by the disaster. This time, large-scale rice distributions were held at Palo and Tanawan.
Sana'y lahat tayo magpasahan ng kaliwanagan.
While helping septuagenarian Alfredo Adome carrying his bag of rice home, volunteers discovered that the senior's wife is also visually impaired. As the couple barely has anything to eat, Tzu Chi's rice came in the nick of time.
I am very thankful to be able to receive this bag of rice. We would not have anything to eat if we had not received this love from Tzu Chi. Thank you so much, Tzu Chi Foundation.
Regardless of their impairment, with Tzu Chi's help, these 3 men are determined to create a better future for themselves and their families.
Nabubuhay kami para yung lang ba, halimbawa may relief, tuwang-tuwa po ako, tuwang-tuwa po kami kasi may relief naman po lalo na pagbigas yung relief.
In Australia, Tzu Chi volunteers organized a vegetarian banquet for staff members of the Gold Coast City Council prior to the 7th lunar month. But first, let's join Ban Chao Tzu Chi volunteers in New Taipei City, Taiwan, as they prepare for their upcoming 7th lunar month blessing ceremony.
Tzu Chi volunteers march through the bustling streets of New Taipei City's Banqiao to promote their cause. Volunteers invite members of the public to attend the 7th lunar month blessing ceremony, hoping everyone can seize the opportunity to purify their hearts and minds. During the day, volunteers provide blood pressure measurement services at a local temple.
I feel that the events organized by Tzu Chi are incredible. Tzu Chi events have garnered considerable support through word of mouth.
We want to reciprocate the support that Fuzhou District residents have shown us, as well as take the opportunity to invite them to attend our blessing ceremony.
Not forgetting our guardians of society, free health checkups were also extended to police officers.
This has a great impact on our health. It also allows us to better understand our physical condition. We are very thankful to all the Tzu Chi brothers and sisters.
Meanwhile, at the blessing ceremony held at this residential building, the community chairman shares his recipe for happiness.
What we need most is to live a life of contentment. We don't need to possess great wealth or lavish material items. What we need most is a happy mind.
Apart from looking out for our health, Tzu Chi has also provided us with spiritual nourishment.
Volunteers make haste to prepare all the ingredients, while also making last-minute checks that the venue is properly set up. Today, Tzu Chi volunteers are on a mission to promote vegetarianism to the Australia Gold Coast City Council. Volunteers firstly participate in prayer to ignite their compassion. Next, to stress the importance of environmental protection, volunteers showcase a scarf made from PET bottles. As Australia is one of the biggest meat-eating countries in the world, to introduce the 99 City Council staff to a healthy alternative, volunteers prepared an assortment of vegetarian dishes.
Just like to express my thank you and gratitude for being invited to this. It's a very nice outcome and the food is very delicious.
Although the visit was brief, the volunteers' thoughtful arrangement, however, garnered positive responses as these staff members look forward to the volunteers' next visit.
"55% of Taipei is hillside, which is under constant pressure from torrential rains and flooding. Thus, the city has a special division to help protect its slopes as mandated by the Soil and Water Conservation Act. Here is the Geotechnical Engineering Office under the Public Works Department.
Hello, Geotechnical Engineering Office. A suspected landslide?
After a call is placed, Taipei's Geotechnical Engineering Office immediately dispatches an inspector to investigate.
Once a citizen calls us about a possible landslide, we will immediately dispatch an inspector, even if it's in the middle of the night. Because disasters can happen at any time, we have to be on site within an hour after a call is placed.
This is what it looked like back on October 3rd of last year. He had already plowed land which lay there unprotected, so it was quite dangerous.
Of course I did. They were really troublesome, but it had to be done. I thought I was just farming my own land. I told them I wasn't going to build a house or anything like that. They said I was in violation of the Soil and Water Conservation Act and that I must follow the rules.
To prevent unauthorized development of Taipei slopes, the inspectors are on standby 24/7. They must be even more vigilant during the flood season.
As it is currently flood season, we have asked the farmer to take some precautionary measures. We ask him to cover the exposed soil with tarpaulins, so torrential rains will not trigger mudslides.
Before, when I was farming on the plains, I didn't know anything about any soil or water conservation. The inspectors told me that the terrain on the mountains is very dynamic and can shift very easily due to water, wind, and rain.
Zhong Jingxiong has been an inspector for 23 years. Always carrying a GPS system, he roams through Greater Taipei's mountains.
Whenever something happens up on the mountains, we mobilize immediately. Today, it just so happens that we can see our target right from here. Sometimes it is way deep inside the mountains and not accessible by vehicles, so we will have to climb. The job can be quite difficult. Sometimes we get worn out, but we tell ourselves that we're doing an excellent job to protect our environment for future generations, which keeps us going.
55% of Taipei City, about 15,000 hectares, sits on hillsides, which is roughly the equivalent of 577 DaAi forest parks.
For the 15,000 hectares of hillside, we have a total of 16 inspectors, so each person has to be responsible for some 900 hectares. They are the ones on the front line and our first deterrent against those violating the law.
Veteran inspectors such as Zhang Jianshui and Xiao Zhenzhong, who have carried out their assignments alone in all kinds of situations, say, an inspector must always be alert and prepared.
Snakes, bees, and even dogs. I've seen them all. But they are nothing to worry about compared to men. Though I haven't been beaten up yet, I've been chased down by violators.
We go out even when there's a typhoon. We are just doing our part for the planet.
Inspectors sometimes have to play the role of a punisher, and sometimes they have to take on the role of an educator, not to mention the hazards they have to face constantly while on duty. But for the preservation of Taipei's mountains and the protection of citizens' life and property, they say it is all worth it.
Tzu Chi volunteers in Taipei, Malaysia recently paid care recipient Li Shoulan a visit. Upon learning that she'd have been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, volunteers remained by her bedside to tend to her needs.
Each time Tzu Chi volunteers pay care recipient Li Shoulan a visit, they are always overwhelmed with emotion.
She can only crawl on the floor now. When I heard that, I was heartbroken, because when I saw her just 1 or 2 months ago, she was still fine.
Seeing how thin she has gotten really breaks my heart. It is so sad to see her so frail. We have been caring for her for so long.
Diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, Li spends much of her time resting in bed, while Tzu Chi volunteers remain by her bedside to tend to her needs.
I hope I can get well soon. The Tzu Chi sisters told me to keep an open mind and not to think about it too much. They have helped me out with a lot of things, and for that I am truly grateful.
During their visit, volunteers learned of Li's predicament and immediately came up with a way to help.
We immediately went to the recycling station to find a commode, as Sister Shora urinates frequently throughout the night.
Helping massage Li's joints and applying some lotion, volunteers hope to minimize her pain and wish her a speedy recovery.
Next, we meet care recipient Mr. Huang, who has been cared for by Tzu Chi volunteers since 2008. Unfortunately, Huang was recently diagnosed with cancer and needed to move to a new apartment. Therefore, Banqiao Tzu Chi volunteers mobilized to help the family of 3 with the move.
On the morning of July 20th, Banqiao Tzu Chi volunteers arrive at care recipient Mr. Huang's house to help him and his family move.
Because he needs to go to the hospital to undergo chemotherapy on a weekly basis, he needs to move as quickly as possible. So we're taking advantage of this holiday to help the family move to their new home.
Mr. Huang is the sole breadwinner of his family, supporting his wife and daughter, both of whom suffer from intellectual disabilities. Recently, Huang was diagnosed with tongue and throat cancer just as the family's rental contract was up. Therefore, Tzu Chi volunteers offered their help.
I don't know how to express my thanks. My heart is full of gratitude. Thank you very much.
After the move, Tzu Chi volunteers from the other side of Banqiao district will continue to care for the Huang family.
A big thanks to Sister Feng Mei. If were not for her care and support for the family over the years, Mr. Huang wouldn't have quit his bad habits and joined the volunteers training program. We will continue to care for the family as well.
After my body gets better, I will spend more time doing volunteering work, so to extend the love I received from Tzu Chi to those in greater need.
Thanks to Tzu Chi, Mr. Huang can now concentrate on his cancer treatment. Once well, he will return to Tzu Chi's ranks to pay the love forward.
In Tao's Hualien, Tzu Chi volunteers continue to promote the drinking of tea instead of alcohol. At a tea gathering held at the Xingshi tribe, many residents donated their filled bamboo coin banks to reciprocate the support they have received from the volunteers. While in Fengfu tribe, residents put a no drinking sticker on their doors to show their determination to quit drinking. Visiting the Fengfu tribe in Fengbing Township for the fourth time, Tzu Chi volunteers are here to once again encourage residents to replace alcohol with tea. Inspired by Tzu Chi's message, several residents placed a no drinking sticker on their doors. During the tea gathering, volunteers shared the meaning behind Tzu Chi's bamboo coin banks. After which, some residents stepped forward to donate their already filled coin banks.
It says here that the richest is the person who is the most ordinary. It is exactly the same thing you told me earlier. You said that you are wealthy because you are happy.
Everyone in this tribe has a compassionate heart. All of them are working together to improve their fellow tribe members' health.
Meanwhile, at the Xingshi tribe, Tzu Chi volunteers are holding a tea gathering for the second time. During the event, one volunteer reminds locals to take good care of their neighbors.
You don't drink that often anymore, right? You are still very young, so you can start a tea club here in the tribe, okay?
Touched by the volunteers' endless love and care, local residents Pan Wu Li happily donated his filled bamboo coin bank to help those in greater need.
I'm not well off, but I will contribute my love to help others.
At the end of the event, volunteers gifted each participant with a box of tea to encourage them to stop drinking and thus change their lifestyle for the better. In Taiwan's Taipei City, Tzu Chi volunteers arrived at Datong District to give care recipient Mrs. Chen Huang's rundown home a makeover and a thorough cleanup.
Today, Tzu Chi volunteers are here at Mrs. Chen Huang's house in Taipei's Datong District to help with some cleaning.
This house is more than 50 years old. All the wooden structures and wooden doors are rotten.
Problems of rotten doors and cracked walls are getting worse day by day. On the night of the typhoon, Mrs. Chen Huang had a hard time falling asleep.
This is a wooden house and has not been repaired for years. It leaks from the roof.
When heavy downpours come along with typhoons, Mrs. Chen Huang will sleep in a chair.
To improve the living environment, volunteers did a bit of repair.
Am I doing it right? No, it's falling down. We're surprised to learn that such a dilapidated house in Taipei City still exists.
Volunteers even helped the homeowner install a sliding door, making it easier for her to take a shower.
Thank you, Tzu Chi volunteers, for fixing my house.
Thanks to the volunteers, Mrs. Chen Huang now enjoys a safe and sound environment.
We go back to Penghu at the end of the show. Tzu Chi volunteers handed out consolation cash and letters written by Master Zheng Yan to family members of those who passed away in the TransAsia Airways plane crash. We'll leave you with these images. Thank you for watching DaAi Headlines. Goodbye.